if any?
Yes, what I'd like to do, as you know, we have our attorney coming to make a presentation tonight, but we received a request from one of our former students here, one of our present students at the high school, Tristan Scales, to do a presentation about his Eagle Scout project. So with the board's permission, I'd like to move him into this time slot. So Tristan, if you wanted to come up, you can sit right here at the table. The mic is for the people at home. And the floor is yours, and thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
So recently, I started actually constructing the shed. It's behind CSDA, near the theater shed.
Yep.
And since it's on the school property, the designated beneficiary by the Boy Scouts is CSDA. So I wanted to come let everyone know that I am building the shed there, and I've already started. I'm hoping to finish it this Sunday. At this point right now, I have all of the framing done and the siding's all on it. If anyone has seen it, it's bright red, it's hard to miss. It just needs its trim, its roof, and the doors on it, and then it'll be all done, and then hopefully we'll be no longer looming over to get it done before the election. The voting booths can just, all the equipment can just sneak out the back of the gym and into the shed.
Nice.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank
You've
you.
solved a major problem we've had. It's been a lot of discussion about that, so this is huge.
A lot of adults have been trying to figure this out.
Yeah, it's a perfect solution that we could have thought of. So thank you, I appreciate it. Are you doing the project on your own out of curiosity, or do you have help?
I have help from like friends, family, the troop.
Great.
I know you did some fundraising for it, so has that been going well, or how has that been?
Yeah, I held one fundraiser in August, which I raised about $1,000 for it,
Great.
which covered a majority of the costs.
Great. Excellent. Well, thank you.
Yes.
We really appreciate it.
Is there anything you need from the board officially, Tristan?
No, I just promised the Eagle Board that I would let everyone know that I am building this shed. You can fulfill that.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
Look forward to
Appreciate
seeing
it.
it completed.
Good job
Yeah.
presenting too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's really fortunate that we've had 2 Eagle Scout projects at CSDA in the last year. So thank you to the scouting community.
All right. Do you want to move on to nominations, resignations, and correspondence?
Yes, I have a retirement for you tonight. This letter is to confirm that I am resigning my position as a reading specialist at Richard Mahakian Memorial School effective June 30th, 2025. I appreciate the professional opportunities you have provided over the past few years, and that is from Betsy Bucknam. Betsy has done so many roles for us, been so efficient and effective, and I wish her nothing but the best retirement imaginable. Well deserved, and thank you for all your efforts, Betsy.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just need a motion to accept that so we can post it.
I'll make a motion to accept the letter. Is it an intent to retire or a resignation?
Well,
I thought it-
she's retired once. Yeah.
Oh.
Re-retirement.
She's pulled a couple Michael Jordans along the way.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
So this is a resignation.
Yeah,
but it's-
resignation.
yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of Betty Bucknam as a reading specialist at the RMMS school with an effective date of
June 30th, 2025.
June 30th, 2025. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Any discussion? Obviously, it sounds like Betty's been a part of the system for a while and done a
Yeah.
lot, and then come back and helped us. So
Yep,
if you
absolutely.
ever want to come back again, I'm sure we will. But thank you.
This one's final, she said.
Yeah, this one, okay, don't
That's
ask
what I
again.
Until we call.
Yeah,
Until we
exactly.
call her.
But thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for all of your work with our students, and sounds like she's been with us for a long time. So
All right. All in favor?
Thank you very much. That's it for nominations, resignations, and correspondence. And during that time, for those of you who don't know him, Jim O'Shaughnessy, our attorney, was able to sneak in. Jim has put together a presentation on the tax cap, kind of to give us a refresher and to go over some changes that have happened. And there'll be a period at the end for the board to ask any questions. And I've already said to Jim, as we go through the budget process, if we feel there's a need for Jim to come back, we would do that. So with the board chair's permission, I'll turn it over to Jim.
Sounds good.
Hi, thanks everybody. I'm Jim O'Shaughnessy. You may have seen me at various district meetings. I'm an attorney at Drummond Woodsum. My office is out in Manchester. I pretty much exclusively work with school districts in New Hampshire. Yeah, so I'm going to cover a couple of things. Municipal tax cap law basics. So I'm just going to go over the basic tax cap statute. And you've had a tax cap in place for a couple of years here. We'll talk about how that is so and what it means, budget prep in general, annual meeting stuff, a couple of recent changes to the law, and then we'll take questions and try to work our way through it, see what we know and don't know. So there'll be a test afterwards. You get to leave early if you pass. So I hate slides with lots of words, but that's okay. Laws have lots of words. So in 2019, there was a petition warrant article that proposed, I believe it was a 4% tax cap, that 4% was amended at the meeting to increase to 8%. So you currently have a tax cap of 8%. What is a tax cap? It basically means that your budget and now your warrant articles cannot exceed 8% over the prior year. This is the language right from the statute, and you'll notice in the second and third bullet points there's bold-faced language. That's actually new this year, so that's one of the big changes to the law is the bold-faced language. But I'm going to read it because I think it's helpful to kind of hear right what the statute says. In a town or district that has adopted this section, and this section means RSA 32B, and it's really 32B1, the estimated amount of local taxes to be raised for the fiscal year shall include the operating budget and all other warrant articles with a tax impact certified by the governing body or the budget committee and posted on the warrant for the annual meeting. The estimated amount of taxes to be raised for the fiscal year shall not exceed the local taxes raised for the prior years as shown on the same budget and as adjusted provided in paragraph 1A or 1B by more than the tax cap authorized when this section was adopted. Blah, 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 lots of words, right? That's how, unfortunately how things are drafted. It kind of starts off by defining it and then says what the prohibition is. But when you're setting your budget and all of your warrant articles that have a tax impact this year, you have to look at last year's warrant and tax impact warrant articles, multiply them by 8%, and that's the total dollar amount that you can propose in your warrant. That's an important thing. We're going to talk about what that means. But your proposed budget as an SB2 district for next year and all those warrant articles have to come under the tax cap. Somebody already has a question. And I don't, Andy said questions at the end.
Oh, sorry, questions at the end.
And he's the boss, but I don't actually mind questions
I
in
don't.
the middle.
And
I'm
again,
cool with that.
yeah.
So if you have a question before you forget it, ask
Which is
now.
highly likely. Just wondering since we have to move to this process for this year, looking at last year's budget, we would look at the budget plus the warrants. We
Yeah.
wouldn't.
I
Okay.
know that. Yeah.
That's what's new. The boldface language that says shall include the operating budget and all other warrant articles with a tax impact. That's new.
Yeah.
That was it's a bigger deal than it looks like.
It is a huge deal, right?
It's a huge deal. So you're really subject. You got to total it all up from last year and total it all up from this year, and so now you're looking at collective bargaining agreements and really anything that's an appropriation of a dollar amount it's going to have a tax impact. Andy, go ahead. Sorry.
Just to be specific, like let's use the maintenance trust. We usually fund that from unreserved fund dollars.
Yes.
So we say there's no tax impact,
Yes.
but we're not returning that money to the taxpayers. So is that 8% on that as well, or is that no tax impact?
That's a great question. So if you're appropriating from unassigned fund balance or whatever you call it,
Yep.
like whatever your term is, it's all
Yep.
the same thing for this purposes. Unless you're raising it from taxation, you don't have to show a tax impact.
Okay.
So if you're raising it from fund balance, we don't have to show it as a tax impact. We know that technically there is a tax impact because you're not returning the money, but you don't have to show it as a tax impact. Therefore, you don't add that, include that in the total.
Okay.
Okay. So in the language, it uses the word the same budget. It says the estimated amount of taxes to be raised for the fiscal year shall not exceed the local taxes raised for the prior year as shown on the same budget. Same budget is defined. It means the operating budget and all other warrant articles with a tax impact. It's just reiterating that. It's so like there's no confusion here over what you can and can't do.
Yeah, no, we got it this year.
Yeah. No mistaking the obligation. So there's a part in there where it says as shown on the same budget and adjusted as provided in paragraph 1A or 1B. So let's talk about what that means. So the fund balance part, if the local taxes raised for the prior year were reduced by any fund balance brought forward from previous years, that amount of reduction is added back and included in the amount to which the tax cap is applied. Right? So Andy, you've done this before. Tell me how that works.
So tonight, Donna will tell us that we returned over $300,000 to the taxpayers from last year's budget. That $300,000 is then used in what I'll call our favor when calculating the tax cap.
Make sense? You'll see here it refers to paragraph 1A or 1B. I'm going to talk about 1B because that's the new section of the law. We'll address that below. But we're not going to talk about that yet. So this reiterates the point that the tax cap applies to the budget as well as all special warrant articles with tax impact. We already said this, but it's your bonds and lease purchase agreements. So your first year of a bond, you're gonna, when you approve a bond or lease purchase agreement, or really often like any long-term contract, a collective bargaining agreement, it's usually there's multiple things happening in that warrant article. I don't have one in front of me as an example, but one of the things you're doing is authorizing the issuance of bonds or approving a collective bargaining agreement. The second thing that's happening is you're approving in a CBA like you're authorizing all 3 years of appropriations. That's why there's like year 1, year 2, year 3, which are the estimated increases. And the third thing you're doing is then you're actually raising and appropriating like the first year cost or the first year payment. You following me?
Yeah,
So let me just finish the thought, because
Yes.
that was like a comma.
valid.
I know, lots of words. I just want to make sure no one was lost. So that amount that you're actually appropriating for bonds and CDAs in that year is one of the things that you have to include in calculating. You have to be under the tax cap. You count those when you're calculating the tax cap. You're not counting all 3 years, because in the second and third years of a collective bargaining agreement, that money has to go into your budget. So like, you always have to be thinking about each year increase in the context of like, we got to stay under 8%, because it's going to be added to your budget the next year. And so if you have a huge amount of a bond payment or a huge amount of a CBA, you have to be under the tax cap for that. Like that's, and it never really, like when I was there when this was amended to 8%, I was like, that's plenty. In this inflationary time we're dealing with right now, I mean, I think it's manageable, but it's at 8% is not as big of a number as it used to be, particularly with the contracts I know that I'm negotiating across the state. Like in some contracts, we're giving 8% in year one. Like we have no choice because of the market. So you're stuck. You got to figure that out. It has to be part of how you do your budget prep. And the challenge is going to be with CBAs and bonds, you don't really have a lot of control over that first year payment amount and the schedule itself. Like it just sort of is what it is. And you can't go to an annual meeting and amend the collective bargaining agreement. Like once you reach the agreement and you put it on the warrant, it is what it is. So you can't, like in other instances, amend that up or down.
So you kind of always have to rob Peter to pay Paul, as they would say, if you're right about that and you have a large CBA.
Yes.
You'd have to take out other things from the budget.
That's probably always going to be the analysis you're going to have to. We'll talk about overrides and so forth, but yes. Did somebody have a question?
Yeah,
Yes,
I did.
sorry.
I just want to. I don't like math, so I just want to clarify. Bonds. So that would just be the first year, though, because the second. So when we're looking at the budget, yes, we would have to think about further years, but really the tax cap just applies to that first year.
Yeah, when you're calculating what the tax cap dollars amount, you're looking at last year's appropriation for the payment of the bond.
Okay.
And then in the future years, it's part of your budget. Like it's
Okay.
in your operating budget.
Okay.
So like, you don't even. It's just part of your operating budget, and then So
Okay. And then an expendable trust. So is that like special where is special education falling in this?
yeah, that's a good question. So you probably have a special education trust, or So expendable trust funds and capital reserve funds under the law are really the same thing. They're treated the same. Just think of them as being kind of interchangeable. A long time ago, they weren't when they were first created, but now the law looks at them all as the same for the most part. You might have you probably have special ed expendable trust fund, hopefully with a couple $100,000 in it, and every year you try to add to it from fund balance, money you have left over. You try to tuck some of it aside as a rainy day fund for special ed, so you don't have to. If you have to dip into it, usually you're dipping into it for a couple, maybe $100,000, $200,000 for a costly out of district placement or something like that. So if you appropriate money into one of those funds directly from taxes as opposed to fund balance, it has to be under the tax cap. If it's appropriated from fund balance, which is your leftover money, it doesn't.
Can I just add one thing to clarify?
Yes.
So, because you had mentioned where does special ed fall? We do have a special ed trust, and Jim explained it perfectly. But we use that as that savings account for the unexpected out-of-district placement or something to that effect. But special ed costs that are known and budgeted for are in the operating budget, not protected by anything, and so that will swing the budget to a really high increase, or some years. Maybe that's helpful if the students move on. But those are mandated costs that we don't have a lot of control over that directly impact our small budget.
But looking at the second bullet point, is the trust, it sounds like the trust fund is included under the tax cap?
Yes. It depends on how the fund is being funded, or how the trust is being funded. If it's being funded, so let's say, for example, the warrant article will say, shall the district raise and appropriate $100,000 to be placed in the special ed expendable trust fund created on such and such a date for the purposes of funding unanticipated special ed costs, such funds to be raised from unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, no amount to be raised by taxation. That's the standard language. That means it's coming from fund balance.
So that's.
It could say such amount to be raised from taxation. And then there would be a tax impact statement. I would say the tax impact of this is this. If you guys I think you do tax impacts now, right?
Yeah.
That was passed a couple of years ago. So if if it's from taxes, it has a tax impact, it has to come under the cap, and then it's counted towards your your total the next year.
Right. So I think like a challenge for us will be a lot of times we try to estimate, thanks to Donna's good work and Kelly's good work, like how much we might have on July 1st, right? So that we try to say like no more than this much to be raised from taxes. And so we're sort of guessing, like we're predicting how much we might need to raise from taxes to keep the trust at a certain minimum dollar amount. And so that's going to be tricky because it's not, you know, it's not always a specific dollar amount.
Right.
It might be no more than.
Right.
But then by saying no more than on the warrant that we're presenting to the voters, we're having to like cut back something else in the operating budget.
Sure, but when we did that was, I think, Maintenance Trust a couple years ago. We split the funding, but what we had to be explicit about was what was raised through taxation,
Okay.
which would apply to the tax cap.
Mhm.
The rest was up to the available
Oh,
leftover.
Okay. So I
and
have
that's-
it reversed.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
What I'll say is kind of like I like to boil things down and be like, what do I think all this like we're not there yet, but like what do I think this means and where you're going in your mind is typically we look at fund balance as a way of leveling the tax impacts, like the setting of the tax. Like you don't want to see big fluctuations. Your special ed costs, I'm looking at like New Hampshire special ed law, I'm looking at my team and how many more cases we have now and how many more attorneys we have to hire now. The state's adding another special ed advocate. Their special ed department is growing a lot over on the state side. I look at all that and the changes to the law, increase age 22, putting the burden on the districts. Special ed costs, I don't see them slowing down. Like I think districts are not in a position to push back really. And even when it's like honestly, even when it's not necessarily in the best interest of students or a student doesn't need something or previously we'd be able to say, hey, this isn't a need. I think you're going to spend a heck of a lot more on special ed. I don't know how you're going to control that number, but if you graph it out 10 years, it's going to be like this.
Yeah.
It's just going to be, and there's
Unfunded
no way
mandate.
to avoid it.
Mhm.
I'm trying to build a team who can actually staff these cases, and it's hard. I have attorneys who are delaying their retirement because there's so much special ed law going on. What I think that means is you're going to be grabbing more of that. You're going to have to try to grab more of that fund balance to put it into trust because you're not, unless you override your tax cap more often. How are you going to fund those increases every year? Because I could see it here, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here, but I could see the special ed costs going way over 8%. I mean, that's not even a stretch. And it's for kids, so you're gonna do that.
Well,
Anyway,
you have
I
to.
digress.
It's legally required by federal law.
Yeah, it's like if it's exactly. So
So it would be good if we had representation in Concord that could propose an amendment to perhaps exclude special ed mandated
Yeah,
federal
actually.
special ed costs
That would be wonderful.
from the tax cap.
it's an idea.
It's an idea.
Maybe there could be an alliance on that issue. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide. We're on slide annual meeting. We haven't talked about annual meeting. Just to remind you of some basic stuff. The law says that every tax cap has to have an override. In a city, the override requires a 3/5 vote of the city council. I'm just pointing that out because sometimes you'll hear people throw out, you need a 3/5 vote or it should be a 3/5 vote. It's not the case here. You have a deliberative session. At your deliberative session, all warrant articles can be amended by a simple majority vote. So your warrant article proposing your operating budget and any of the warrant articles which have a tax impact can be amended up or down with a simple majority vote. That's how you effectuate a tax cap override in an SB2 district.
So it doesn't, are you saying that we as a board present a budget that is within our tax cap? at the deliberative session, then each warrant can individually be amended, and if that total amount goes over the tax cap, that's okay because the deliberative body overrode the tax cap in each warrant item.
Yes.
So it's not a wholesale override, but it's an override of each warrant article.
That's how you'd have to do it. You
Okay.
have to propose an operating budget that's under the tax cap on the warrant.
Yeah.
The warrant is subject to amendment at the at the deliberative session, which is your first session of your annual meeting. If it gets increased, it doesn't matter. It's an override. So like the voters have the choice, the legislative body.
I mean, I have to say that as a somebody who's like helping to craft the budget, and also as somebody who's voting on the budget as a taxpayer, I like the flexibility that you can say, all right, we're going to keep it under 8%, but we have to like override this amount for special ed because like we're mandated to provide this. So it's like people can pick and choose, like, you know, what funding might exceed the tax cap. while
Yeah, I've
keeping
given
the
some thought
remainder.
to how you effectuate that. Like, it's a communication and an information exchange. So the warrant is literally, it just means we're asking you to come to a meeting to talk about these things. You're only allowed to propose formally one proposed operating budget, and then you have a default budget that's part of that warrant article. You have budget meetings, you have a budget hearing, and you have an opportunity at that meeting to make a presentation about how you prepared the budget, why you prepared it the way you did, and what needs are being met, and maybe perhaps what needs you can't meet that you would like to meet. You have pretty free reign at that meeting to provide, or in the other meetings, to provide the information you think you need to provide to operate the district. And if that means, hey, this budget we don't believe is sufficient, here's why, and here's what we think we need, perfectly fine. The voters are entitled to know that. You don't want them guessing. You know, I heard a rumor that you need $1 million more. Like, you should be communicating with them as openly as possible about what your needs are and why. That would be my recommendation.
Just one quick clarification in my mind. If we override some of the articles, we don't have to go back to the operating budget that we propose that's under 8%. We are not obligated to figure out how much over 8% we are.
No.
Okay.
You're correct.
There's a I don't even want to get into this because I actually didn't even think of it for today. But there's a 10% limit. If you have a budget committee, I don't know if it applies to a budget advisory committee. I don't think it does. So I'm thinking out loud. The answer to your question is no, you don't. They're all individually addressed, and then you'll have a total.
Mm-hmm.
That's the total that'll be used for setting the tax rate, and that's the total times 8%, which will be used for next year. So whenever it goes up or down is your total. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you.
So we talked about all that. Annual meeting is covered. No more questions. The voters then, once you're done deliberative, it's a ballot now. So there's no more amending. It just gets voted on up or down. So if your operating budget is like a little higher than your default budget, or I don't know what it's always different, and you increase your operating budget by amending it on the floor of the meeting, and it fails, you have your default budget. That's how that's going to work.
So that was my question. So is the default budget also going to be under the tax cap? Like, do we have to figure out if
No.
Okay.
The default budget is a formula. Call it a formula.
Okay.
It's a formulaic budget. It's
Okay.
really not a budget. It's a calculation
Okay.
based on last year's budget plus or minus obligations and legal requirements, and you take out things that are one-time expenditures, and you come up with it's a budget, it's becoming more of a budget than it's really is, but it's really a calculation. It's a number.
Okay, so but it's not necessarily like we don't have to sit here and be like, oh, it's 6%. Like we don't have to tax.
No,
it. Okay.
you don't even worry
Great.
about that. It's prepared by typically the SAU, and they'll tell you what it is. And
Perfect.
yeah, it just goes on there. Sometimes it's
Okay.
like closer, higher, or lower than your operating budget.
Okay.
Okay, recent changes to the law, asterisks. This change does not impact previously existing tax caps. So there's a whole group of school districts out there in New Hampshire, like all the rest of them. I think there's 4 tax cap districts in New Hampshire. Laconia, Manchester, you folks,
Dover,
who?
Dover,
Dover. You're the only non-city.
right.
Isn't that
Right.
interesting?
That is really interesting.
You're
Yeah.
super lucky.
Yeah.
So they're not dealing with like deliberative sessions and all this other, dynamics, but you are. So there's a new formula that's allowed currently under the law. You can your tax cap can be adjusted by either a fixed dollar amount or a percentage. Like you're limited to those 2 options. Under the new law, you have an option where you can have like a formula. This is the multi-factor formula. You're allowed to. So you asked a good question, Gina. You're like, there was a lot of people who thought this new provision applied to existing tax caps. This is a new option. Hampshire Municipal Association, I checked with them. I looked at the legislative history. I spoke with my colleague. I read materials presented at a Kidder conference by another New Hampshire attorney to make sure I was like certain as I can be. This is brand new. No one's done it. So, but there's a new formula out there that's basically a formula where you account for inflation and population changes to adjust your tax cap up or down. I don't think it's worth going into that much detail about it. And also I don't want to because I don't love math either. And it's a little bit, it's when you haven't actually seen it done and you don't have to do it, it becomes really abstract but basically it's inflation and your population adjustment.
That's your time's up.
I'll go a little quicker. This is the boring part anyway.
So that only applies to us because we're a town or village.
Does
This
not.
new formula doesn't apply to you at all.
Oh,
So I'm just telling you there's a new formula.
Oh,
you
'cause
may
it does not
hear out there,
impact
there's a
any
new
other.
formula for school districts. No, you're not. You have a tax cap. It was adopted by the voters. Unless they adopt something different, you have what you have. It's not changed.
okay, so this is for new.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Tax
New
caps.
asterisk doesn't apply to you. Don't worry about it. Just say, okay, I learned about it, but I don't care. There's another new thing that's the school district budget cap. It's similar, but it's basically it's the same thing. It's just the budget of the school district is inflation and changes in population. And honestly, that's an entirely new statute that was created to, I think, try to make it easier for more school districts to adopt tax caps. I guess that was the legislative testimony. This will make it more palatable, I think was the term, for school districts to adopt tax caps. I'm not going to share an opinion on it. There's a new provision for school district budget caps.
But again, this
Also
doesn't apply.
Does not
Okay.
apply, but people will talk about it.
That's
This
good
is
to
not
know.
you.
Oh.
Okay, that's good to know. We're
Yeah.
grandfathered into the old law.
But you may see these as petition warrant articles.
Got it.
So we thought it'd be
Okay.
nice for
Got
you to
it.
be aware
Yeah.
that this could be coming under the new law.
So under the new, you're saying this could be coming because someone might bring forward a petition.
A citizen could bring something forward.
25 citizens.
People
Right.
might say, "Ooh, we like we like this new formula. B, we like this budget cap thing. We want to do this with our 8%." You're always literally at the very front end of all the stuff that's happened. Unfortunately,
Yeah, it's like we're a test lab or something.
yes, it's really cool.
wonder why.
Interesting. Interesting.
But
Yeah, interesting.
yeah, it's cool. I get questions look at all these petition warrant. You guys are always kind of testing out new things. So.
Yeah.
But for
Not
now, we don't
anybody's
know what's
detriment
coming.
or
But you ought to
anything.
know these are new things that you could be faced with. They don't apply now. So I want to talk quickly about amending, rescinding, because this is something that's come up where there's really no provision in the law for amending a tax cap. You can amend warrant articles, and you can amend your, like if you're in the co-op, you can amend your articles of agreement. Often those are just simple majority. In order to change a tax cap, you have to rescind it. That requires a 3/5 vote. So getting rid of a tax cap requires 60% of the voters to approve it. In order to put something else in place, it's my opinion that you have to rescind what you have and adopt something new. Everybody out there in Brookline, please don't put a petition warrant article and just adopt one of these new things, because I don't think that would work. I think you could, if the voters pass a new tax cap without rescinding the current tax cap, then which tax cap is in play? My answer would be, okay, good, Socratic, what do you think?
The
It's
lower
just
one.
knowing the petition warrant articles that we tend to get, I can predict that there might be a two-part warrant article that would propose to rescind and adopt,
Sure.
or rescind and replace
Yep,
in the same warrant article.
that could happen. Wow. Yeah.
I mean,
We'll have to
I'm
take it
sure
if it
I'm not
comes.
giving them any ideas. I'm
It's
sure.
gonna require a 3/5 vote.
You would not.
It's gonna require a 3/5 vote to change from what you're doing now to something different, because you have one in place.
Right.
That's, I think, the
hard part.
message here, that we can't adopt one of those new things without at least modifying the current.
And the new
System.
things require a simple majority or
Yeah.
a 3/5?
I believe a simple majority.
Okay.
That's actually an interesting question. I heard someone recently say it required a 3/5, but I don't think that's right. Can I look at my phone?
Oh my gosh, yes, please.
No.
Yeah, I know. It's like, no, don't look at the law.
As all of us are looking at our phones.
Really good cell phone reception in here.
Oh, yes. It's excellent.
Yeah, that's one thing I didn't put on here because you already have a tax cap, so hold on a second. Let's just keep talking. So the language in here is the language for rescission, shall we rescind the provisions of RSA 32, 5B. So that's the language for rescinding a tax cap. It's right in the statute. It can't be amended, and it's prescribed language under the law. Hold on, let me see this. Okay. We've probably covered some of this, but I had some questions, like just to kind of, in case you were being shy and didn't want to interrupt me. If an override is allowed, how do the voters at the deliberative know how to propose the override? So we already answered that question, right? There's a lot of different ways you can get information out to your voters. You just have an obligation to put a proposed operating budget in front of the voters.
So I do have a clarification
Yeah,
on
I
that.
do
So
too.
at a budget hearing, we could say the budget that we're putting forward is this budget that comes under the tax cap. We think that we need a budget of X amount, and this is why.
That's what I was.
So then a voter could be like, oh, they think they need, okay, let me propose that. But we are going to bring to the deliberative session under the tax cap budget.
Yes.
Okay.
Or are you saying we could propose a budget that's over the tax cap?
So there's a really interesting nuance here that you're probably not even intending to ask, which is, does your budget have to be under 8% of last year's operating budget? The answer is no. The overall appropriations next year have to be under 8% of the overall appropriations on your warrant last year. So you could propose an operating budget that goes up 10%, as long as the other appropriations
Going down.
don't. Like when you add them all up, don't. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Right.
That's a question that actually has come up in cities with departments where, like, this was a big thing in Manchester for a while, where they were wondering, does our department have to have a budget that comes in under the tax cap, or is it just the city's overall budget that has to be under the tax cap?
So just to clarify, we can communicate that we would not have proposed this low of a budget if that's what happens, but we can't actually, and we can even say numbers that we would have proposed for each article, but we cannot propose an actual different budget. That's the only difference.
Yes.
So we can let the voters know if it comes to that. Okay.
And it
So-
seems to me that.
Yeah, so, sorry, let me answer the
Oh,
question.
sorry,
It
sorry.
requires a 3/5 vote to pass and rescind.
Okay.
Okay.
Just wanted to make sure I had the right answer.
The other version I was thinking though is that if the default budget for the calculation, the default formula already includes previous obligations, it seems like it's quite likely that the default budget is going to often be higher than the proposed expenditures.
Yeah, I mean, I think that happens a lot.
Because I think before, like, some of those things weren't included under the tax cap, right? Like, there were,
So we just looked at the budget, that warrant article.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but the other articles are going to be items like a collective bargaining agreement. It is the dollar amount. We can't change that.
right,
We might have a bond or a lease. It's whatever the dollar amount is. Potentially, you can look around changing a maintenance trust dollar amount if it's raised by taxation. But really, the only amendable warrant article, the SAU budget, you can't change that. It is what it is. It's whatever the calculation is for Brookline. So the only amendable article would be the budget. So if all of those, which is quite likely that those would be high, would cause us to be over 8%, it's the budget that will have to be presented with a negative impact. So we would likely be forced to pull positions out of the proposed budget. Those positions would be included, yes, in a default.
right.
So it is likely that the default would be higher than the tax cap compliant budget we would have to propose because we have no wiggle room in any of the other warrant articles, potentially.
If you pull the positions, and I'm not in default budget mode right now, that's happening soon.
Yeah, get ready
I
for
can
it.
recite that off the top of my head, but it's unfilled positions, not positions that have been eliminated.
Okay.
So you might have some positions that you leave vacant through attrition that help lower your budget, but if you eliminate them, then they are not included in your default budget.
That's correct.
But if
That's
they're vacant,
that's an important nuance.
Right.
but if they're vacant, then aren't they in the budget?
Yes,
Yep.
that's,
So then the dollar amount is still there.
yes, in the default budget. Probably in your operating budget too, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we can talk about that later.
Mhm.
I mean, there are districts that are like, these are vacancies that we don't intend to fill, so we're not putting them in our budget. I mean, you have flexibility, there's no hard, fast rule how you handle that. And that has caused contentious conversations and threats of litigation because it feels like you're manipulating, like if it's an unfilled position, why are you, if you don't actually intend on filling it, isn't it eliminated? I don't know.
What if you
Court's never weighed in on that, so.
Yeah, what if you intend to fill it, but it's 27 para positions you can't fill?
Yeah,
Anyway,
but you don't want to eliminate it.
right.
Okay, I know.
I don't know.
I don't have a good answer for that one.
Mhm.
We're already talking about the next question, how do recurring costs impact future budgets? I mean, that's really just, we're having that conversation now. We just wanted you to be sufficiently terrified of how hard this was gonna be so that you could lose some sleep. And I'm open to more questions. Andy?
I have one. You're proposing a lease that it will be cost neutral because what you're doing, let's use solar as an example.
Yeah.
I do a lease, but the cost a year is $107,000 for that lease. But I will gain $107,000 out of the budget. How is that tax cap? Is it neutral and I don't?
Well, is it really not? I mean, do you show that as a reduction in your energy expenses in your budget?
Well, that's
That's
exactly.
how. I mean, to me, that's where it would be reflected.
Right, but it is, so that would be neutral because I would show the 107,000
Yeah.
as new money that I want to spend. But in my budget, I've done that reduction.
Yes. So it'd be net zero.
But is that dangerous? Because if the lease is not approved, you've now removed your
Correct.
energy
That's the
from
next
the budget.
question.
Like then we can't pay the lights.
You removed that $100,000.
Right.
Yeah. guess.
Yep. Okay.
Trying to think of.
Playing number games.
Yeah.
It's gonna be so much fun.
Yeah,
You
we're
can.
gonna,
I mean, you can. You really don't have much flexibility, like you would in a traditional district, because you could go back and like amend the budget
Yeah.
if it didn't pass, which you can't do here.
right.
But you could bring up the issue and say, if we were worried about, you might want to add 100 to the operating budget here during deliberative, as a safety
Yep.
valve. You could do that too.
Let me ask the same question. So my $107,000 is my lease, and I'm gonna get rebates of $60,000, which are real money that's gonna come into the district. Is my cost for that first year 47 or 107?
How do you account for it?
Oh, the 60 is revenue. That's where,
I mean, some of this maybe is how you negotiate those. You know, it's like, to me, you have to account for the whole cost, because you
Mhm.
appropriate the money and you have to pay
Yep.
for the lease,
Right.
and then you get rebates.
I just wanna make sure that I'm putting the correct calculation together
Yeah.
if we get challenged, but at the same time, we've always tried never to over-ask,
Yeah,
you know, so it's kinda like, I know I will get X amount of rebates if I go to new lights and things like that.
and this is an. I don't know if I could say this as an absolute, but I think it's as close to one that your fund balances, that at least the ones I've seen over my time working here, are the smallest. You run the tightest budgets
Mhm.
that I see in the entire state, by huge margins.
Mhm.
I am always astounded by how little, like, flexibility there is
Mhm.
at the end of the year for you folks. Like, other districts have pretty significant fund balances, you don't. So you're already operating on pretty small margins.
Right.
I'm not trying to be controversial, I mean, it's just much different in a lot of other
Yep.
districts.
Okay.
It's more of a, I guess, a theoretical, and it may not matter, but, so in 2019, voters decided to adopt an 8% tax cap on our budget. They did not decide to adopt a tax cap on the budget and other warrant articles.
So that's a fantastic question, actually, because it gets into the nuances of how the law was amended. So I
Okay.
actually brought the bill.
Okay.
Because in order to answer Gina and Andy's question about whether one of the new formulas apply to your current formula, you have to really look at the language of the bill and look at the bold and see, okay, so the answer is really, really obvious here, because in section 1, it says, in a town or district that has adopted this section, and right, that was one of the first slides I did. That has adopted this section. Oh, you can't see my cursor, I was highlighting it. The estimated amount of taxes shall include. That means the legislature has changed what the tax cap is. And that, it's not retroactive, but it is, in the future, that's what the tax cap is. And there really isn't an argument that they can't do that, because the legislature empowers you as a political subdivision of the state, so they have the power to do
The
that.
overriding authority, okay.
Someone could have
Seems a little
argued
shady, but.
in any town or district, you know, that has adopted this section subsequent to its adoption, or like, you know what I mean? They could have like grandfathered in districts and
Yes.
done as something, but they didn't, and 100% intentionally, whether you think it's good or bad, they intended for it to apply to tax caps that were currently in existence.
Now, it's possible that someone could also bring forward a petition warrant article to eliminate just the tax cap based on the fact that they feel like they didn't vote for this. Like, is that, I mean, that's an option as well, or is that a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I mean, it's not why I put that in here, but like, that's the language for eliminating the tax caps. So someone could submit a petition article that says, shall we rescind, which is how you get rid of it, and it's a 3/5 vote. So anything's possible. That's the process.
Okay. But the board can put that article in if they
Sure.
so choose. Doesn't have to be a citizen's petition. And the board could use the argument that the citizens of Brookline never voted on that. I'm not saying whether
They
it would
didn't.
pass or not,
Yeah.
but they didn't vote on that. The legislature only had to worry about 3 cities and 1 town, so they weren't getting that much feedback
Yeah.
on the bill, in my humble opinion. So it may be something,
So the
that-
understanding of the voters at the time of its adoption was that it only applied to the operating budget and not all
That's-
warrant articles with a tax impact. You know, if you're talking about a pure sort of local control model, like, you have local control, like, you can do that.
well, and this would also go to the point, because I've been approached, as you know, because I asked you to provide legal advice, if they were to move away from SB2, because this tax cap in a debatable annual meeting would be a different animal than it is with all-day voting.
Yes.
Because in an annual meeting, the board can get up there and say, we are still $200,000 short to do everything you would like us to do. Now, that's, if that's where you want to vote, that's fine, and we'll live with that and make the cuts. But if you want to amend it, this is your opportunity. We have some flexibility at deliberative session, but not the same as an annual meeting.
No, you usually have like a really small population making the changes
Yep.
for the voters,
Mhm.
what they get to vote on. So it's, you know, that's the one of the critiques of the SB2 model.
Mhm. Anything else for Jim?
Should we see if Cindy has a question?
Yes.
Do you have
Hi,
any
Cindy.
questions?
Cindy's on our finance committee.
Yeah.
What's that?
I just explained that you are on our finance committee.
Not anymore.
She was on our finance committee.
Just a citizen
She's-
listening.
An important citizen.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I think the mic would be helpful for people at home.
I just had one, and I wasn't sure if you kind of already answered. So when the school board presents the budget, right, so when they present the budget, it's the operating budget plus the default budget in the same warrant article,
Yeah.
correct?
Yep.
I was gonna pull that up just to, but
And
yeah,
then
it's-
there's the warrants.
Yes,
So the 8%, the operating budget plus all the warrants,
yeah,
less than 8%.
yes,
Does the calculation for the default
No.
budget plus the warrants also count?
no.
Okay, so that could be 10.
Default budget is a default budget,
Right.
like, it's not,
No, but if the default budget, which may be higher than the operating budget, if the default budget plus all the warrants as
it's 10%,
presented,
that's fine,
that,
yeah, that's fine,
that's fine, okay.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yep, because the voters voted for the default budget. I mean, that's how the law looks at it. By failing to adopt the operating budget, you're adopting the default budget, even though it's,
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure if the school board had to present like both of them plus, had to be below the 8.
no, it's a good question,
And,
but no.
sorry, pardon, Cindy LaCroix, Lewis Drive.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
I just had one other question. I think the point that you brought up is that we have all of these wonderful budget meetings that the public can attend, and we hope they will attend, and we welcome them to attend before we even get to deliberative session, and then before voting. Are we as a school board and the school district, are we allowed to present written down on paper our recommendations and with like the budget breakdowns? If like this is 8%, this is what we really need, it's coming in at 9% or 10%, can we do that math for people if we need
Why
to?
couldn't you?
Oh,
I'm not doing
I
that.
mean,
I just
No,
I
it's
like
good,
to
yeah.
when
Yeah.
when we have your time, I like to just make sure that we get it.
100%.
Okay.
I've argued in other circumstances that if you feel as though the tax cap budget is not meeting the needs of the district, as a board and as a superintendent, I actually think you're bound to tell people that because you're not doing your civic duty, you're not doing your job. Like, they don't know, and so they could literally be watching a school system or a municipality operate on less than what it needs and start really losing quality, like losing teeth. If you don't inform the community, then I don't know if you've done your job. You don't have to say, we don't agree. You can say whatever we don't agree with the tax cap. I mean, you can say all those things. That's fine. You're an elected board member, so you're there to provide that viewpoint to the voters.
And we also can do a warrant article that really, I think it would inform voters at least and give them an opportunity to decide what they really want as far as budget and warrant articles and a tax cap, because that has never been voted on by the voters. What was
They've never voted on
the
tax cap applying
to the warrant
to
article.
the warrant articles and the operating.
and the
Right.
operating
Right,
budget.
it's a
Exactly.
substantial change that we may have, you know, as an elected official or just in the interest, like you said, to inform them that like this is a substantial change. You can tell us whether or not you want to continue with this change or whether you don't, because this is a pretty substantial change from what you voted on in 2019.
I don't think generally voters are going to understand that unless we make it explicit
Right, that's
through
what-
doing a
Yeah, I mean, I
warrant
wouldn't have
article.
understood
Or,
that
and
without-
Yeah, I
writing
needed
down
to
some
hear
things.
this to understand it.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think you're all really like understanding this very well. There's a couple other things I'd say. One is there's no limitation on the, you know, don't get angry, but there's no limitation on the number of hearings or public hearings you have about this, about the tax cap. You know, it's a big deal. Your budgetary public hearing is, I don't know if it's well attended or not. Sometimes they are, but like, it's not as many people as you would like think, and then people show up at deliberative and like they weren't at the public hearing. So like, if you're trying to get a message out there about any priority issue you have those are tools in your toolbox. You can work with Andy on it. Like, you know,
Can
I know he
they-
doesn't want to, but there are other laws, for instance, Budget Committee, SB2, like that require public hearings for obvious reasons, because they're like big issues and they want to make sure the public's on notice and has an opportunity to be heard and all that. Like, there would be nothing wrong with having a little bit more process behind some of these conversations this year.
Can the board craft a statement
Sure.
and send it out to the community that is crafted in a way, because I'm not trying to electioneer or steer anybody which way to vote, but just tell them the simple fact that when we passed this, there was one set of rules. Those rules have changed drastically, and, you know, there is potential that this may not impact us that much this year. But next year, we have a teacher's contract, we have a para contract, and we know our enrollment's growing, and there's going to have to be some bond for some sort of renovation or construction. So like, in the near future, there's no way that they'll be able to meet 8%. And what will happen is we would be forced to then make ends meet by reducing staff, which would increase class sizes, which could potentially increase the likelihood of people wanting to move into the communities and thus impact home values.
I mean, it's a long question,
Yep,
but
they always are.
But it's 100% true. So, like, for instance, the school district, Concord School District, has a charter. This would be tantamount to the legislature amending the school district's charter, fundamentally kind of changing how they adopt their budget without ever giving the voters, like the citizens, a chance to weigh in on whether they like that amendment or not. It fundamentally changes how you operate. So.
So we could,
In a community where like a charter amendment is being proposed, like, you want to give people as much information as possible. You want to keep it as informative as possible, and make them aware that it's a big decision. It's important that they know. It's important that they show up and vote and make informed. I mean, that's all. I think that's what you should be doing.
okay. So we will work on a statement to submit to you so we
Yeah.
don't cross any lines
Yes,
from an election point of view.
I understand.
Okay?
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you, thank you, thank you.
Will we be able to get a copy of this power, just so if we need to refer back to it?
Yeah, we're gonna post it
Gina has
online
it.
as well.
Perfect,
So
okay.
It
that
says copyright
citizens,
on
you'll be able to
there.
refer citizens to it online?
Okay,
Yep.
perfect, great. I won't remember this in 2
Yeah.
weeks, so that's why I need visuals.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
You're
you.
Thank you, Jim.
Good seeing everybody.
You
Jim
too.
would clap too, right?
I know.
We're just
Jim
like,
likes
I love
Jim likes
clapping
claps.
for.
we're all conditioned to clap.
See ya.
All right.
Good time.
You guys set that?
Is it okay to open public input early, or should we go
Well,
back to something?
we need to approve minutes.
Oh, that's right.
Skip that,
Okay.
and then when the principals are setting up, we could
We're in
open
principals
public
report, but
input.
let's have the-
I
Okay.
don't think we'll have much.
Okay.
Open up for public.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, we're gonna approve the minutes and then, yeah. Just in case anybody planned to show up at 7:15. All right. So do we want to move on then to approval of the minutes from the September meeting?
Yep.
Okay. Now, let me go to this. Let me get there. Okay, so we have, Allison and Kelly were absent, so they would abstain. Well,
That's changed now.
oh, that is? Oh, okay.
You don't have to
We're
be at a
not at the
meeting
training.
to now vote on the minutes.
Oh, great, okay. All right. So,
Is that your pen?
all right, so I'll read the amendments first, or maybe?
Yep.
I always forget this one. Oh, my goodness. All right, so the following amendments were offered to the meeting minutes from September 25th, 2024. On page 10, line 30, replace proposed with proposal. And then on page 10, line 40, replace proposal with propose. So I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Kelly, you in favor?
I am gonna abstain just because
Okay.
I wasn't thinking that I was going to.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, perfect. So,
If you vote no, though, that I think.
I'm abstaining. I'm not voting no.
I know, but
Yeah.
you are allowed to vote no.
Yeah.
I think it just, we had that talk about numbers and quorums and things like that, so it does help us when people vote yes or no, not abstain.
I just didn't.
Okay,
think
so-
it was
Yeah,
fine.
no, no.
so I'll just do all in favor again. All opposed, and anyone abstaining. Okay, there we go. All right, we've done our presentation. So, we have the principal's report next.
If you would like to open public input.
Oh, you want to do it now?
and then-
Okay, sure.
Well,
Yeah.
that way, when the principals present, if somebody comes in, you can always,
We can stop,
Yep.
okay. So it's 7:03, and I'll open public input. Is there anybody that has any input? Oh, good.
okay?
I have a question, but I understand no response is needed. So Neela Corey, Lewis Drive in Brookline. As we were just talking about all of these petition warrant articles, or if the school board would issue them, I guess I don't understand what is the best method forward. If it's like, say, there are residents who would like to rescind the tax cap. How do we make sure we're not, and petitions can issue any petition warrant article, I understand that concept, but also making sure that we're supporting the school district and the school board. So I guess I don't understand how do we make sure that
We're not overlapping each
we're
other
not
in any way.
overlapping?
Yeah.
Yes. So, and I don't know if there's a formal process for that, and I understand.
I think that's a great question. I was actually wondering when we would discuss whether or not we want to put together a warrant article to rescind the tax cap. I don't know if we do that here, or maybe plan for our next meeting, because that gives the public the chance to.
I would suggest we put it on our next meeting.
Okay.
If the public then decides that maybe they want their warrant article to be a little different than maybe what the board is proposing, that is fine. You met Jim tonight. Part of the obligation we have as a school district, if there is a citizen who's requesting how to do a petition, they just need to reach out to me, and we would contact them with Jim, because what we don't want is people to go through an effort for something that may become illegal based on the wording. So there's always support and help if you felt the petition that the board may propose didn't meet what you were hoping to accomplish.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. All right. Now we have the principal's report.
All right, good evening. Good evening. For our principal's report, we have our enrollment history on the front page. And in the coming weeks, we are going to be welcoming 6 new students to RMS as well. So our enrollment will slowly climb up. And I don't think CSA has any new students coming in at the time. As for the highlights for RMS, we've had a great opening since we last met. The first bullet is mysteries, pumpkin leaves, place values, digraphs, nonfiction text, and ukulele. Sorry, someone asked me to speak really quickly tonight. So those are just some of the highlights, what's going on in the classrooms. As we walk around the building, there's some great learning going on. The kids are so engaged in all of their lessons, and the teachers are doing a fabulous job of planning lessons, but keeping the student engagement high. The second bullet is Pangea theme, and what that is we've recently started painting around the building. You'll see there's a new bluish color around the lower half of some of our wings. And I want to thank a couple of volunteers that have come in on a Saturday and a Monday to help me with some of that painting. But what we're doing is in each hallway represents a continent, and above the doorways, teachers have picked countries from that continent, and we're just trying to create that global awareness school-wide and then integrate some of that global awareness into the classroom. So we're calling that the Pangea theme. We recently had an off-site drill. I'm not going to show you where to, but I want to thank all of the teachers and the staff and the volunteers. We had our preschool families as well come out and help out, but also the safety officials and the emergency crews that supported us with that drill. The students were fantastic, keeping quiet during that reunification. The staff did a wonderful job supervising the students and making sure that we are following all of our safety protocols for that drill. And it was also a good opportunity for us, and we'll talk about it in our goals, to practice some of our alerting systems and notifications as well. And then our students at school, we had a Eagle Scout last year build a sandbox on our playground, and we've had some students that have learned how to dig their way out of the sandbox, but like under and over, like so. I called Power Stone and Gravel, and they were very generous, and they brought over a couple loads of fill, and that was really nice of them. So we had our kindergarten classes write them thank yous, but thank you to Power Stone and Gravel as well, and just shows that community partnership.
So it's kind of like a Shawshank Redemption type?
Exactly how I explained it to them when I was calling them.
Got it. Okay. Just wanted to see if that was my understanding.
And then, and just in our calendar, we on Monday, PTO had the Brookline PTO golf tournament. It was well attended. There were 11 teams of 4 at Northern Spy Golf Course in Townsend, and it was a wonderful event where there were raffle prizes won, 50-50 raffles, and those funds generated by the PTO are what support our programming and field trips throughout the year to support students. And we are also deep at both buildings parent conferences. Those are going really well, and we really enjoy those times, our teachers, so they have the chance to meet with the parents, talk about the growth that their children are making, and just continue forming that partnership. And we are excited to invite everybody here and the families in Brookline to our Halloween parade next week. All right, and I'll pass it over to my friend, Mrs. Boulay. Oh, sure. I share.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Well, CSDA has been very, very busy as well. We're underway with our implementation of our Amplify and CKLA for ELA. Students are really seem to be enjoying that. They're doing a lot of writing, and the students are really enjoying writing. So that's really exciting. That says a lot about the program and the interest in the topics that they're reading about. CSDA also had their first student council meeting last Wednesday morning. The students were so excited about that, so I am thrilled. And we were talking about different ideas. The students have already been coming forward with their own ideas. They've been talking to their classmates and about spirit weeks. They want more spirit weeks to occur and have a lot of input on what type of things they can dress up as, and of course have all the staff involved in it as well. So I'm looking forward to that. They're also looking forward to taking part in our monthly assemblies. But as I explained to the students, you're the voice of your classroom. But we also want to invite your classmates to participate as well. So I look forward to that as the year progresses. CSDA also had their offsite evacuation on Friday. It went extremely well. We received such great compliments from the police, the fire, and the other emergency personnel that supported us throughout the state. The students just did a phenomenal job. They were just so well behaved. As I kind of explained to them, with the beautiful weather, just think of it as a lovely little field trip, and they really enjoyed it. So I thank them and all of the staff that supported it. This week we've been having at CSDA the Red Ribbon Week, which is a voice about reminding just individuals in general about health, that we always want to promote healthy habits, and that there's a difference between medications and drugs. That's kind of how we look at it when we speak to the children about that, particularly in their health classes. And today was very exciting. I forgot about all the things. I wonder why I'm a little tired. Today we had the Brown Center at our school. So that was part of our social emotional learning, and it ties in with our responsive classroom. And as one individual said to me, I said, well, so what did you think? And it turns out this particular counselor that this child was in a group with, the counselor at the end said, I want to have some input from you. So 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. What was your idea? How did you think it was? And one individual said, well, I'd give it a 1. And, she said she was just really dismayed, like, oh my goodness, what happened? So she said, well, what could I do to make it better? She goes, oh, we needed more time. It was great. So that was, kind of a great summation of the day. And again, we, have conferences coming, have already started. And I do have to say, I've had some 4th graders ask, are we having a Halloween parade? I said, oh, unfortunately, no. But we will be doing Halloween festivities, and students will be able to wear costumes as well as the adults. So we have a lot of things coming up. One thing I can announce, I know I'm stepping forward to November, but we did put on, I announced today to the PTO that we will be having our annual turkey trot for the CSDA students, staff, and we have volunteers taking part. So that's going to take place on Monday, November 25th. So that's something else for us to look forward to.
So I just want to say, I was able to go to the RMMS drill because I had to pick up my daughter, and I was fortunate enough to have my husband go through the line, so I had a chance to walk around and look, and it was very well done. I do want to say the kids were very calm. I know I sent out that email to everyone but yeah, I really commend you guys for all the work that you're doing to prep the students, because I know that can be a huge, what are we doing? Why are meltdown inducing thing? But Dan, you were so calm, and all of the kids were calm, and I'm sure with CSD it sounds like that. So I just really want to say thank you to both of you guys as well for prepping our students so well, because the stations were all set up so easily. Everything was super smooth. I thought it was going to be I'm there's going to be traffic. No, it was moving, and kids were being reunited. And I think so. I just want to say that I was really impressed with how that went. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to see that and kind of see how it went.
Yeah, and thank you for that. We appreciate you participating as well.
Well, I thought about leaving her there, but I don't think that would go over great, Dan. So.
We would have got her back.
I would have got her back, yeah.
And then on our last page, we just have some pictures just to highlight the month. We have, like I said earlier, the ukuleles. 2nd and 3rd graders are really enjoying that with our new music teacher, Mr. Trombley, who's doing a wonderful job. And then it was really cute. This little kindergartner came one day after school just to show how passionate the kids are about their building and how much they love it. This little girl came in. She's a kindergartner. She just planted in one of our planting beds. She asked permission the day before. She's like, sure, go ahead. So, and her grandparents are always parking right next to that at the carpool line, so they wanted something aesthetically pleasing to look at too. So it was just very thoughtful, and I just want to include that, thanking her for her community service that she's trying to do around Brookline. And then it looks like CSD's got a couple. Sorry.
These are just a couple of pictures showing what the students are doing in CSDA in art class, and basically they've been learning about Dia de los Muertos, and I'm not sure if I did that very well, but basically it's the Day of the Dead, but it's under the Mexican culture. So they've been learning about the culture and the importance of remembering those who have passed on, and how it's important, especially in the Mexican culture, that they, remember and recall and think about all the wonderful memories and experiences that they had with those family members that may have passed on. So they've really enjoyed making the masks and learning about the culture. Oh, sure. Yes.
So we have our goals presentation, and there's 5 goals this year. We did a 1-upper. We had 4 last year.
All right, so I'll be beginning it. We're going to be talking about the infrastructure, and this year we are actually in the implementation as well as the monitoring phase. So our goal for 2024-25 school year is that we were going to continue to monitor our physical assets against the maintenance requirements, our building and safety codes. Obviously, we're always, for instance, our emergency management planning, and tying in with our safety meetings on a quarterly and monthly basis at the buildings or at the district level, and looking at our projected enrollment of our school community to ensure that we have a safe and optimal learning environment. Some of the action steps is that the facility committees are recommending phase 2 of the energy project, consisting of the lighting controls and energy systems, and obviously that's continuing on. We will continue to monitor the NESDEC numbers and current enrollment figures as we speak about on a monthly basis. We're also continuing to evaluate our playground design, and I am happy to announce that our playground is actually the installation began on Monday. I did share pictures on our parent square with the families and the students, and the funniest thing was on Monday, the builders arrived and they started clearing some of the area and actually doing some digging, and they were removing some of the equipment out on the ground. And when the first group of students went out for recess, I came out, and all of a sudden I hear this cheer, and it was for me. They said, "You did it, Mrs. Boulay!" And I said, "Well, I really didn't do it." But so I just want to thank again the PTO, all the members for the past 4.5 years that I've been here, working to make this a real situation in which students will actually see a new playground. And all the donations, as Dan was mentioning earlier, the golf tournament, all the fundraising and generosity of this community, the students are just thrilled that this is really becoming a reality. So that will be completed hopefully by the end of next week. So we will. Well, no, those are a little similar, but there's been some changes added to it for the better.
And they're swapping the slide out here as well. Is this the same group that's swapping their slide?
Yeah, and I asked Justin, who's from the company, to, once they're done, to hop over. We've got a couple repairs we need, but they're wonderful to work with and just very generous. So.
Can I ask a quick technical question? What is the surface for the new playground? Is it?
So there will be wood chips around the main surface, and then on top of that, we're having it's called a walkway, basically, and it's made of a soft material. If you think it's actually the same type of matting that's used in the warm-up room, warming room in a hockey rink. So when someone can go on with the sharp blades of skates, walk on it. So that's the surface that's going to be used as a walkway to access the different areas of the playground.
And that won't be over wood chips.
That will be on top of the wood chips, but they'll be flattened down and stomped down, so they'll be flat.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to think about the inclusivity of that and some of our new state laws around kind of.
Yes, and that was part of the reason why we are using that. So that was approved as part of the new laws for inclusivity.
It doesn't seem to fix the problem, because if you have somebody that has a mobility issue and they're walking on top of something that's on top of wood chips, it's like when you put carpet, it's like when you put wood floors over carpet or whatever. And then also too, when children are walking around not on the walkways, it makes them susceptible. to not being able to do that?
The way the walkway has been put together, it will access those areas for accessibility for those individuals that may have mobility issues.
And you said it's been approved in line with the new laws about accessibility?
Yes. Yep. Any other questions?
Is this, John, next one.
And so the next one's talking about our future-ready, emotionally intelligent, culturally aware. This we started last year and are continuing to implement and refine the process. And so this was us reviewing and refining that MTSS school-wide behavior expectations and routines through direct teaching and reinforcement throughout the school year. I know some of it's been talked about, and I think one of the best things is we just sort of go through the action steps is really just highlighting the communal approach both buildings really take with it, right? There really are, even just walking around, there's multiple instances you can see where everybody is doing this, right? People aren't ignoring things. They're helping to support each other in implementing the positive behaviors that we expect to see. And I really think in a short time, it's made a really big difference in our buildings as well. So part of this is reviewing school-wide behavior expectations with staff and students. We still have posters up on the walls in different parts of the buildings that we had worked on last year. They're really being reviewed and reinforced in the classroom settings and in those transitional times. Implementing responsive classroom to address social emotional learning in all students. Partnering with the Brown Center that was mentioned again, which is just such a fun day, and particularly at the end of the day. Bus duty is actually a great time just to pop around and talk with some kids and get their input on it, and just to see the excitement of some of the students who even many days are pretty reluctant to engaging in learning, and then a day like today pushes them to really collaborate with their peers and work in team settings, and they just speak so highly of it. It's just such a fun day for them. Those opening days of school, like we're just saying, continuing to really target and focus on routines, practices, and establishing them early in the year to continue to make the year go smoothly and revisit them as we need. And then the next 2, 5, and 6 kind of go together, and really continuing to highlight and celebrate these opportunities and to show students that they are being recognized for the things that they're doing well. And through the Blue Jay slips, through the wolf paws, right, these are our ways to not only notice kids doing things well, but encouraging them to repeat it, right? It's one thing to say you did a great job yesterday doing something, but being more explicit with them really helps to repeat those behaviors so that they know what they've done well and they're able to do it again. The school-wide assemblies are held in order to, again, celebrate as a whole community about the positive impact that is happening and the work that not only the students are doing, but again, the really dedicated staff across the board. The ultimate goal is creating students that practice these skills they need to be productive, resilient, cooperative, and lifelong learners, and preparing them for their social, emotional, and academic futures. Again, this age range is such a crucial time to really implement some of those and establish those good habits as they continue to grow and develop as learners with us.
I just have one question. I think this all looks really awesome. In terms of, I know a lot of it's K through 6. Is there anything in particular that's being geared towards even like pre-K, just to kind of like, especially the kids that might be transitioning up into kindergarten next year? Are we thinking ahead kind of like in terms of like their social, I mean, I know they're kind of a different beast in terms of development at this age because it's very rapid. But I guess I'm just curious about that piece of it.
I think it's a good question with it. Dan, can you speak any on the pre-K part?
I'm sorry, I missed that question.
It's okay, I'll explain.
I
guess how it,
Well, I
I
was
mean,
just trying to fix something, I'm sorry.
I mean, the basis are, I mean, they're still integrated within the school. I
Yeah.
mean, they're still exposed to these pieces. I mean, preschool itself works very collaboratively together to work on their routines. It's not, I wouldn't say it's as widespread as the other grades, but there is a lot of work that they do in order to help prepare for that.
I would say they do a lot, and I agree with John, but they are involved. I know that the preschool's doing responsive classroom.
Oh, they are.
They're doing the morning meetings. They're also dabbling with the closing circles. And then in their classrooms, they also have all the matrices that our committee made last year
Okay.
posted in the classroom so that they understand recess behavior and classroom behavior. So it's sprinkled in there, but more age appropriate.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's I was just seeing K through 6, so I was just wondering, like I was saying, in terms of like those preschoolers that are going to go up
Go
next
up.
year to kindergarten and
Yeah.
start to be more. And I'm just kind of wondering, but that sounds like
Yeah.
it's already kind of.
I would say the only thing that we haven't really done is the blue. Once in a while, there's a Blue Jay slip, but it's not happening all the time for preschool.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? You had mentioned kind of behavior. You mentioned the bus. We spent a lot of time, I think, last year talking about student behavior, and I know this was in response to that. And I know you probably don't have any like kind of firm numbers on it, but is there an overall sense of have incidents gone down? Have bullying incidents gone down? Like, can we quantify that in any way?
Yeah, I mean, certainly without numbers like you
Right.
said.
So want me to take
but
that one? I can take that one.
Okay. That's fine.
I would say that we are taking that data. We don't have data to present on it, but we certainly can. I would say to Superintendent Corey can jump in as well later. Some of what's reportable to the state now has changed too.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were to report out, it's going to look a little differently because of what needs to be reported. But I would say early on, I don't want to jinx myself, but it's been a good start. I mean, we've got all of our kids are doing well. I mean, we're like we showed in the presentation last June. I think it was like 87% of students are always doing the right thing, right, or even higher than that. And I would say the buses have improved, especially some of the buses that we highlighted last year. The frequency's gone down, so I think that's good news. But I don't have the exact data. But, oh, Mrs. Blay.
Hopefully I was accurate with what.
Yes, no, I agree with you. I just want to emphasize, only for the fact that I want to state that Mr. Molinari and I and the bus company have been working extremely close this year. Not that we haven't in the past, but, right from the get-go, we're like, okay, we want, really
Assigned
great
seats.
behavior. We've gotten on several of the buses already where we've worked and assigned seats. We, did a layout. We went over to the bus company together. And we've worked with the manager and the buses. The other day I received a phone call about something and they said, this is our recommendation, moving, children here or there. And I said, I'm with you. I agree with you. And collaboratively, we're reaching out to families. So I think it's just a really cohesive, working cooperatively this year.
Is bus behavior included in terms of like behavior expectations? Like, is that something that you guys all talk about?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Okay.
That happens at our opening day. Well, it happens at our September assemblies. We go over all those bus expectations, and then we also ask teachers sometimes, "Can you sprinkle that into your morning meetings?"
Okay.
So it's not just at an assembly; it's sprinkled. Sorry, John, I didn't mean to take
No,
away.
you're
You're welcome to the next slide if you like. But
You're good.
So moving on to our third goal, it's our essential standards for critical thinking, and this goal mostly is about STEAM. And as you know, the last few years we've had our STEAM nights. Last year we had a February, we did one in March, and I think we did one in April at CSDA. And this is just a wonderful time for our students to partner together in small groups, work with grade levels above and below, to practice their leadership skills, but also role modeling skills, trying to work collaboratively, practicing those collaborative or critical thinking skills, problem-based learning skills, also building their skills to be a cavalier, such as like being an innovator, being resilient. So we are planning to do the STEAM night again this year, but we haven't had the time yet to plan yet with our staff what the theme's going to be, but it will be epic. So
Dan, can I just
yes,
put a plug in?
of course.
Scheduling. I feel like
Yeah.
in the past it has been scheduled when we have SAU governing board meetings.
Okay.
Or other school board meetings. I just remember being at a meeting somewhere
Okay.
during either the RMMS night or the RMMS night and the CSDA night were on the same night or something. I remember there being like scheduling.
Yeah, we'll try to work on make sure there's no
But I
conflicts.
think there
Yeah.
was like, I don't know, I think there was an SAU governing board meeting on the night of one of them. And I know they're like the calendars get crazy.
Sure. Yeah.
especially in February and March with like all the district meetings going on. But as a
We will
board member,
work on that so you can come and play.
Yeah, I would love to see like what I
Yeah.
think I popped in late for this one a
Yep.
couple years ago, but I think it's just fun to see. And
Absolutely.
If we're not, you know,
No, we appreciate that. That's helpful to know that there was some conflict, so we'll try to avoid that.
it might have been 2 years ago. Who knows?
We'll go with that.
That's what I mean. Cool. All right. So our next goal is regarding the social emotional learning, but mostly personalized learning, emotional, intelligent, resilient students. So we're in that pilot, implement, review, refine stage of that, and that's to implement a multi-tiered system of support, MTSS, school-wide to address the whole child, both socially, emotionally, behaviorally, and intellectually. Right. So we've been doing a lot of work with both of our, our new implementation of the Eureka Squared math curriculum at the K-3 building, and then the pilot of Amplify CKLA in grades 4 to 5 and Amplify ELA for grade 6. That's been a huge undertaking for everyone this year, which has been going out splendidly thus far. So kind of the action steps for all of these pieces is to review and refine common understanding of MTSS processes within our buildings through professional learning and discussions. So we started last year having MTSS meetings by grade level every 6 weeks to kind of monitor student progress, student growth, be able to, intervene if needed to do some targeted intervention pieces. So thus far this year, we've done beginning of the year data meetings to review all students' data in K to 6, kind of see what those global trends are at each grade level that we would need to, address at the tier 1 level, and then look to see who maybe needs additional intervention and a little extra support or practice. From there, we're meeting every 6 weeks to look at what is our impact of instruction, progress monitoring students, seeing where they're at, what we might need to change, adjust, add, tweak, etc. So we're doing that again K through 6. John and I spend a lot of time together. So part of that is to review and refine our data tools to identify those learning gaps and kind of figure out what prescription of intervention works best for what the students need, right? So we have a variety. We have our Ames web. We just sent out reports for K to 3 this past week. Students at CSDA will get them with their parent-teacher conferences. So it's kind of our universal screener in both reading and math. And then we have kind of a multitude of different additional assessments we can give to students for extra reading, math, etc., to kind of dig down to see what their individual needs are. Again, monitoring that data to inform interventions. We progress monitor bi-weekly at the K to 3 level for those students who are in any kind of intervention, just to make sure they're making the growth we want to see them make. Big one at RMMS is implementing the new math program, Eureka Squared. It is going splendidly. I've been in all the classrooms thus far, for the most part, and the kids are super engaged. I was in second grade the other day. They were all doing this counting activity, and I had second graders working with each other saying, I think the most efficient way to count these would be grouping them by 10. And I'm looking like, you have got to be kidding. And then the conversation continued of, well, I think, my teacher, can I take these 10 groups of 10 and put them together, make 100, and then leave my other 2 groups of 10 over here so we have 120? And the teacher's like, they weren't doing this at this point last year. They weren't there yet. So the growth the students have made is quite remarkable thus far. Similarly, in the classrooms at CSDA with Amplify CKLA and Amplify ELA, the topics have been incredibly engaging. 4th grade is in the midst of going into their unit on the Middle Ages, which is super fun. But as Mrs. Boulay mentioned earlier, the writing has been tremendous. We have students who are, stating a claim, putting in evidence to support that claim, and then having to explain why that evidence, how it supports that claim. And they're doing, all students are accessing this at pretty high levels of deployment. So it was really awesome to see, and I can't wait to see what the rest of the year brings as the kids grow, which is wonderful. And then that targeted professional development, we have had a ton of PD thus far this year, and we have continued to kind of plan that. So we've had whole day trainings for Eureka or Amplify CKLA, ELA, depending on the grade levels. A lot of our early releases as the year progresses are coaching sessions with the vendors. So we have our Amplify coach kind of coming in, talking to teachers, figuring out what the next best steps are, what do they need. Same with Eureka. So we kind of have the rest of the year planned out in that respect. And the end game really is to provide our students with the tools that they need to be productive, resilient, cooperative, and lifelong learners in order to prepare them for their social, emotional, and academic futures.
So I just have two questions.
Sure.
In terms of the meetings, are the school counselors, the school psychologists, are they being ABA, are they all kind of being included? in
Yeah,
those
so
meetings?
thank you for asking that question because that's kind of a newer addition this year.
Okay.
We are, for the majority of the MTSS meetings, our school counselors are part of those, so we can have that lens on top of it. If we have meetings beyond the MTSS to kind of dig deeper in particular student, like to kind of a brainstorming session, we sometimes bring in the school psychologist to kind of have her lens on it too. She's all over the place, so I try to be really targeted in what I invite her to.
Absolutely.
And the BCBA, our BCBA is amazing. So she has been a huge part of a lot of our SST meetings this year in helping us develop plans for students. Yeah.
And then in terms of professional development, so I'm hearing a lot of professional development around like the math and the instructional pieces, which is wonderful. I'm curious about social, emotional pieces. What professional development are we offering to teachers and staff for that?
So the last day of school in June, we did a full day responsive classroom training for all of our staff K to 6. Actually, I pre-K to 6, everybody was there. And we've been kind of having those ongoing discussions at staff meetings. John was doing some today at our CSDA staff meeting. So we've been that's kind of an ongoing conversation. We don't, correct me if I'm wrong, Gina, we don't have anything planned as an outside vendor coming in, but the responsive classroom conversation has kind of been an ongoing thread throughout our PLCs, K to 6.
And can I add to
And we
that?
also,
So Meg has done a really nice job of advocating for additional supports beyond the training that takes place on the one day or the 2 days. And so she has begged me to find money to purchase additional resources for each grade level so teachers have supports for morning meeting and at the end of the day so that everyone can really be on the same page with all the tools they need to implement that fully.
Yeah, that's really important to know. Sorry, it's just really important to know with coming into budget season, kind of MTSS is, it seems fairly like a heavy lift, right? From, the two new instructions and the SEL. So, the resources that are needed to keep it going, if it sounds like it's been really helping, so.
And I can certainly add our Crisis Prevention Institute, which is our de-escalation strategies that we use. There's been staff throughout the district trained in being trainers for their reframing behavior section, which is a newer section to it, and we piloted a 1-hour training with special ed staff, service providers, and actually all of our paraprofessionals. And this really dives into the neuroscience behind behavior. So some of those ideas of the invisible backpack kids come to school every day with, my dog was sick, this happened, and I'm not ready. And really understanding, that sort of that idea that kids do well when they can, right? So understanding how to approach them, what their needs are, and that is something we're going to be working on expanding and getting out to everybody as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's my thing. I'm a therapist, like, first and foremost, I'm gonna ask these questions. I just think, I don't want us to forget about the social emotional piece. I know that we do have a very, really well structured on instruction, which is a huge part of it as well. But yes, kids in this is a very different time for kids to be kids than it was. So I just wanna make sure that we're being mindful of that. And like you said, what are they bringing to school? What things are they experiencing outside of that? And if teachers are requesting, and we're seeing in the data that they need additional supports in certain areas, are we responsive to that? I just want to make sure we're.
And just to kind of clarify too, part of the MTSS means that we're having those every 6 weeks. A lot of that is discussing where the kids are social emotionally as well. So if we have students who need that extra support or plan of some kind, that's part of the conversation. It's not just reading and math, which is, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah, and even with service providers, we're really trying to work creatively with some of the students that you're mentioning, and we've been really working on, we're calling them boot camps, but of a variety of ways: executive functioning, occupational therapy, social emotional learning. We just had one happening today where you had a bunch of 4th grade boys sitting and meditating and working with our guidance counselor and with our school psychologist. So
Awesome.
we are trying to really identify targeted groups and build some of that programming in.
The other piece I wanted to mention too is a lot of our teachers this year, for their second goal that they have to share with us, they have a personal goal and a team goal. Most of them had a responsive classroom goal, and when they propose that goal, a lot of it is training that we offer, but also I'd say over probably about half of the requests we get for professional development are mostly related to SEL. So the teachers are doing a great job as well of finding other trainings they need to target what they need for their classroom, which is kudos to them. And then we approve those. So that's on top of what we are proposing. So.
I think that also shows that they're interested in it and not shying away, which is sometimes the first response is to shy away from, I can't do that. It sounds like they're very engaged, which thank you. It's so important.
And the other thing that we're doing is at our staff meetings, our monthly staff meetings, we're really trying to focus on what type of training can we provide to the staff. And part of it is, at the beginning of the school year, I did something on executive functioning, but we're continuing that. One of the key areas is also students with ADHD and really understanding that and the neuroscience behind it. Our nurse has gone to a lot of professional development over the past year, so I've been working with her along with the school counselor. So we're putting projects together to present to the staff, which is what we did today in our staff meeting. We've also been watching various videos that talk about individuals who have it and what it really feels like for a student, and how we can make sure that the teachers, you have training, but you kind of forget some things over time. And I think it's important for it to be on the forefront for everyone to understand students, so that, again, responsive classroom is wonderful, but you need to understand each individual.
Yeah, no, and I'm happy to hear that. I think clinically, I've worked with this population for a very long time, and I hear a lot of like what happens at school and the environment that's at school impacts behavior. It impacts things at home. It impacts, and just like what environment are we talking about bullying? Are we talking about the impact that's having? It's great that you guys are really trying to highlight this is how it feels for students that are not. I think all of that's going to be a positive in getting our kids to a really well-rounded place. So I'm happy to hear that and want to see that continue, because I think that that's going to set our school environment up to be a more positive and successful place as well.
And just before we go into the fifth one, I just want to give a kudos out to Meg and Abby from Hollis, and also Gina for really kind of pioneering the curriculum, because like Meg shared, the learning that's going on is outstanding, and the resources that we have are really great, and there's just like a new excitement. And also kudos to our teachers for taking on what they have. They've done a great job with it. So for our last goal, we're in the refine review phase, and it's focused on communicating. And our goal is for our district to refine the lines of communication. And I think you've already seen that this year with just the improvement of alerts that have been shared, newsletters. The Parent Squared is really phenomenal. Another new tool that we have for administrators, but also the teachers, but also the parents are really interacting with it as well. The weekly Friday updates that the staff do are great and just visually appealing with all those homeroom updates. And I think the other piece that Trish and I have also liked is, as you saw with the drill we recently had, we were able to notify families on our phones. So
It did work, by the way.
It did work. Okay, yes. But
I didn't know if Danielle told you, but yes, we got it on our phones.
So for us to have that capacity to not be near our device, but be remote and be able to push something out quick like that was phenomenal. So the Parent Square is working great. There's some new improvements that you'll see too. We can now actually have parents pay for field trips through Parent Squared as well. But it's a new avenue for us to network with everybody. So that's our last goal, and then it meets our communication goal for the Portrait of a Cavalier. Yes.
No longer getting Parent Square.
Okay.
I no longer have students in the district, but wondering with the ability to pay for field trips and things like that through Parent Square, I know there's been a lot of talk nationally about school bucks and the processing fees that school bucks charges as a vendor, and sort of how disproportionately that adds costs onto people who are paying for school lunch. Is there a similar fee structure in Parent Square?
Yeah. So when we figure out the field trip cost, there is a small little fee that we have to figure in. I think I know the number, but I'm not gonna say that. It's
That's
very
okay.
small.
No, I was just curious,
But
like,
there is something attached to it where we have to figure in that in the formula, right?
It's, yeah.
Yeah. So
And is that being
Is it
explained
what?
to parents? Like, are parents aware that that's being factored in?
It's the same price for all, so it's a small percentage
That's spread across.
that's spread across
Okay.
across all. So there's no difference of how you pay.
it's just that's
Um,
one avenue, so you don't have to pay it that way, but that's
so if I
Right,
send,
you
it-
don't-
if
You,
I,
you can pay via Parent Square. It's called Stripe. You can pay via check, cash, just as you did before. It just adds another option, but there is no difference in price
Okay,
for the
so-
field trip.
Okay.
We would love to move to this avenue because my school bucks has gotten very expensive, and some states have looked into the legality of it. New Hampshire's not one of them, but certainly something we consider, and that's why we're looking for other options
Good.
to go away from my school bucks.
so there's no additional fee, like it's just factored into the fee of the.
Correct. Like the cost of doing business.
Right, so
thing.
I can write a check for $12 or I can stripe it for $12.
Exactly.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
so.
I think I used it for a fourth grade field
You
trip.
did.
Yeah, it was great. I thought.
I know, who can find a checkbook?
Yeah, I know, seriously.
The cost
That's
of
a
buying
problem.
checks for
Every time I have to
kids,
take
Yeah.
taxes,
you know,
where's
field
the
trips.
Oh, that's good.
Oh,
Right.
where it is.
Thank you,
So,
that was,
thank you.
that was a
thank
great
you.
presentation.
Mhm.
I'm gonna, declare, close the public input at 7:47,
Yep.
7:46. Okay. And then it looks like we have some discussion items.
Yep.